1970s for about 6 weeks, I think was the first tranche of daylight saving, basically to give people more time to enjoy the summer evenings. As we've gone on, we've expanded it now to 6 months, which I think is, as I say, about right. And it does give people much more time after the working day to go out and go around the waterfront in Auckland or Wellington, or go out with the family for a barbecue or whatever and enjoy some pretty good weather. I can't see a problem.
Martin?
Oh, Peter makes compelling points that I couldn't possibly argue with, and I still start to feel like I'm slightly outnumbered here. But I do, I do think you could simply move the working day and you'd have the same effect. So I guess I'm arguing for no change.
I think that's true up to a point. But I think that Nadine's comment earlier about the fact that different people's working days are different hours would just add to the confusion. Some people will be starting an hour earlier or half an hour earlier, finishing an hour later or half an hour later or whatever. I think the way we've got it at the moment, it's uniform, it's across the country, and it's basically half the year. I think it's a pretty good mix.
All right.
Well, and I'm pretty sure, and I'll probably get the biology wrong, but that you need sunlight to help with the production of serotonin that helps you wake up in the morning. And at night you need darkness to help with the production of melatonin to help you go to sleep. So at the moment, people are probably coming into work a bit groggy because they haven't had as much sunlight before they disappear into their offices at 8:30 from when they got up that morning.
And I think next week when we go back to standard time, then that will start to ease. But it's interesting to see that in the United States, there's some evidence in some states there where they're talking about getting rid of daylight saving because they see daylight saving as disadvantaging people's health.
Very interesting. Yes, a bit of response here. Wallace, people who advocate for an end to daylight saving have forgotten or have not experienced life without it. The present arrangement is much better. Peter, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're getting towards the end of the show, but I wanted to squeeze this one in. Egg Boy has spoken out about his attack on Queensland Senator Fraser Anning, saying that while he concedes egging the senator on the head was not the right thing to do, it had united and raised money for victims. I just wanted to go around the panel because he was in the news a fair bit, wasn't he? What do you make of this young man? Nadine, is he a good guy or is he a meddler?
I think he's a bit of a legend, actually. I would have happily egged Fraser Anning had I had the opportunity. I didn't hurt him. In fact, he probably sustained more injury than anyone in that whole process because he got really heavied afterwards.
What, didn't he?
Yeah. And he was standing up for what he thinks is right. And isn't that what we want all of our teens to do, to have some principles?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean,
not with violence, eh? That's the problem. You can't condone it, but at the same time, you find it hard to condemn it.
Was it violence, though? It was just a slight crack to the head of a little egg. What was violence was what Anning did. Jabbed him in the mouth 2 times.
Yeah, certainly the response was disproportionate. That's for sure. He seems to have shown quite remarkable maturity. He's egged the guy, but then he's also come out and said, really, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But I think he's bang on with his own analysis, to be honest.
I mean, is this another case, Nadine, of hailing someone, the white saviour trope, who at the end of the day hasn't really done that much? With all the posters and...
I think, I don't think so. I felt like he was expressing some solidarity with the Muslim community against someone who said something highly inappropriate at an extremely sensitive time.
Definitively took action.
Yeah, and he raised $75,000.
Excellent.
Giving it all away to the Muslim community. Nadine Higgins, Martin Crocker, you've been fantastic this afternoon. Thanks to my producers. I'm back tomorrow. Checkpoint next. See ya.
Yep.
Whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. On tonight's programme, police recover the body of a woman washed away in West Coast floodwaters. Homes are swamped and a community cut off after the Waiho Bridge disintegrates. How long will travellers be forced to take the long way round? The Prime Minister visits the Dunedin mosque that was apparently the accused gunman's original target, and details emerge of a possible link to Austria's alt-right. A survivor of the Almore Mosque shooting speaks to Checkpoint from his hospital bed. He was shot twice while shielding his son. And a giant leap for womankind ends with a faceplant for NASA when there aren't enough spacesuits to go around. RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leia tawa tēnei. Floodwaters have receded from low-lying streets in Hokitika after the West Coast biggest flood since 1982. Up to 800 millimetres of rain fell on some parts of Westland, taking out the Waiho River Bridge yesterday afternoon. This afternoon, the police released the name of the woman who was killed when she was swept away by floodwaters. She was 66-year-old Gloria Reardenhurst of Arahura Valley. Her body was found in the Arahura Valley, northeast of Hokitika, just before 9:30 this morning. Detective Sergeant Brent Lyford says they're still trying to piece together exactly what happened.
We believe that the deceased has been washed down the river during the floods last night, but as I say, the details as to how she's ended up in the water are still to be confirmed.
Brent Lyford says initial indications are that the woman got out of her car and tried to cross the flooded Arahura Valley Road on foot. Transport Agency Systems Manager Peter Connors says there were multiple road washouts, but says the network is managing to recover quite quickly. He says the washed out Waiho River Bridge will be replaced at a cost of about $1 million in the next 7 to 10 days. The Prime Minister says all of New Zealand has a role in making the Muslim community feel safe in the future. Jacinda Ardern spent today visiting Muslim institutions in Dunedin. She visited the An-Nur Childcare Centre, which is owned by Mohammed Alayan, whose son Atta Alayan was killed in the Christchurch mosque attacks. Dr Alayan was injured in the attack. The Prime Minister then spent time with worshippers at Al-Huda Mosque, the initial target for the attack. Ms Ardern says that she has assured the Muslim community about its safety, including providing an ongoing police presence.
Our job is to make sure that the community and New Zealand as a whole knows that safety is our number one priority, and to give that sense of security. Equally, members of the community everywhere can give that sense of security as well.
The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. The police are investigating whether a Christchurch man at the centre of a standoff overnight was a risk to the community or had links to the mosque attacks. A tip-off from the public led to a search of a property in St Martin's, where a number of firearms were found. A 54-year-old wanted in relation to the find was then located in a parked car in Richmond shortly after midnight. However, he later died at the scene from stab wounds following a long standoff. A nearby resident, Chrissy Bennett, watched it all unfold from her laundry window.
We heard an armed offender go, stay still and I'll take the dog or pull the dog off. And then the next thing we knew, they were running down here and they had someone between them but not upright, and he was put down on the road.
The Police Commissioner Mike Bush says while there's no evidence to suggest the man was involved in the mosque attacks, that will form an important part of their investigation. Dozens more complaints have come forward about sexual harassment and assaults at an Otago University residence after an article in a student magazine. 4 women spoke out about their experiences at Knox College between 2011 and 2017 in the magazine Critic, accusing hostel management of failing to deal with what they call a misogynistic culture. Critic writer Esme Hall says since the article was published, more than 30 people have contacted the magazine with further allegations. She says some of the new complaints are current, while others dated back to as far as 2007. The Presbyterian Church Assembly Council, which owns the college, has appointed a law firm to provide an independent and confidential listening service for former students and explore ways in which the church can help. More than 900 people who may have been exposed to measles have been contacted by Auckland health authorities. There are 9 confirmed cases of the highly infectious disease in the city so far. Auckland Medical Officer of Health, William Ranger, says more cases are expected, but it isn't yet classed as an outbreak.
We've got 59 cases, people who are in quarantine at the moment. So that's people we're asking to stay at home during the incubation period in case they develop measles. So it's a reasonably large number of people that we're following up at the moment. And our objective is to prevent the spread of the virus further in the community.
William Ranger. It's been 2 years since New Zealand was rid of endemic measles for the first time, meaning any new cases stem from overseas.
It's 5:05. New Zealand Rugby's Chief Executive Stephen Tew believes it's too early to say the proposed Nations Championship won't go ahead because of concerns in the Northern Hemisphere. World Rugby's concept has hit a roadblock after the English Rugby Union declared possible relegation from the Six Nations would have catastrophic consequences for them. But Tew says the concerns are not news to New Zealand Rugby and all nations are still working through the proposal.
We all think, the concept's got real merit. It's great to have something new in front of us. But we and the rest of our SANZAR colleagues have also said we're not saying yes to it either. At this point in time, there are a number of things that we would like to work through, and that process is underway. So to rule it in or out at this stage, we think is premature.
Steve Tew. Meanwhile, the Crusaders have named All Blacks captain Kieran Reid in their starting lineup to face the Hurricanes on Friday night. Reid, who hasn't played since the All Blacks' November tour of Europe, returns after the side's loss to the Waratahs last weekend. Scott Barrett and Richie Mo'unga have also been named to return. All Blacks hooker Dane Coles has picked up a minor calf injury and won't play for the Hurricanes, but they will have TJ Perenara and Ngani Laumape returning. And the Spanish tennis player Roberto Bautista Agut has upset world number one Novak Djokovic to advance to the quarterfinals of the Miami Open. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, episode 4 of The Fall of Bashar. Our drama marking the 40th anniversary of the Iranian Revolution. Tonight, the Iranian leader turns to his old allies, the USA and UK, for help, but they seem to be keeping their distance. We have an Indian viewpoint on Britain in the run-up to Brexit, and John Thornley is talking repentance in this month's Song of the Spirit. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Whanganui, including the Central High Country and Bay of Plenty. A few showers, rain with some heavy falls spreading eastwards later today and tomorrow morning, followed by showers. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine with high cloud at first. Occasional rain developing tonight, first in the south. Manawatu to Wellington and Wairarapa. Periods of rain today, a few morning showers tomorrow, then fine spells. Severe norwesterly gales about Wellington and Wairarapa, easing this afternoon. For Bulla, Nelson and Marlborough, rain heavy for a time, clearing this evening, mainly fine tomorrow. Canterbury, cloudy periods and some showers, possibly heavy about and south of Banks Peninsula this afternoon. For Westland, Fiordland, Southland and Otago, showers possibly heavy about coastal Otago, clearing this evening, fine tomorrow. Chatham Islands, fine spells today, rain tomorrow morning, clearing in the afternoon. It's coming up to 8 minutes past 5. You're with RNZ National.
Thanks, Susanna. And this is Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. Tragedy on the west coast as floodwaters swept through the region, claiming one life as water inundated houses and closed roads. The police say the body of Gloria Reardon Hurst, who was in her 60s, was found this morning. Our reporter Logan Church joins us now via live view from Arahura Valley, just north of Hokitika. Logan.
Hi Lisa, yes, we're here in Arahura Valley after 24 hours or so of torrential rain in the west coast region, and farmers all along here are counting the cost of that event. I'm standing in front of a dairy farm and we're told all the cows that were in the paddock behind me have had to be moved due to this paddock now almost being completely submerged underwater. We can see kilometres of fencing along the side of the road, and we've driven up the road, and this continues for a long time. This damage to all of these fence posts and the wires. We can see debris and weeds wrapped around the wires of the fence, and of course that takes a lot of manual labour and hard work by the farmers who live here to fix. However, it's not all bad news. We've heard that a lot of the roads that were shut yesterday have reopened. State Highway 6 between Franz Joseph and Fox Glacier is still shut. However, State Highway 6 north of Franz Joseph to Hokitika is now open. State Highway 6 south of Fox Glacier to Haast is also open. And of course, Arthur's Pass, the main link between Christchurch and the west coast, has also reopened. However, motorists are being urged to be careful on all of these roads, given that there are still quite a lot of slips and some surface flooding in areas, and parts of these roads are now back to one lane. So motorists are just being urged to be careful. Renewable. Even though the sun is out here, Lisa, there was a tragedy this afternoon here in Arahura Valley where we found out that 66-year-old Gloria Redden-Hurst, who lives here, died after being swept away in the flood waters last night. Emergency services were called earlier this morning. Earlier today, I was at the site of the accident. This afternoon, north of Hokitika and Arahura Valley Road, the woman's car was lifted off the bank of a swollen stream, hoisted onto a truck and taken away. The police say it appears the woman tried to leave the car and cross the floodwaters on foot last night. Detective Sergeant Brent Lyford spoke to me at the scene.
We can confirm that there is a female deceased, one deceased. We believe that she has been in a vehicle at some stage. At this stage, the matter is under investigation. We definitely referred to the coroner. We believe that the deceased has been washed down the river during the floods last night. But as I say, the details as to how she's ended up in the water are still to be confirmed.
Even though the floodwaters have receded, it's clear from the damage seen here, a raging torrent swept through this area last night. You can see the tyre prints of the car in the banks of the stream. Weeds swept away by the river can be seen thrown up to half a metre on fences. Some of the road is destroyed. Bits of the road that remain here are hollow. The dirt underneath washed away.
My message to the general public would be just to slow down. Make sure you know that the road that you're travelling on is okay to be on it. Don't take any risks and just be safe out there.
Other parts of the west coast are also counting the cost of this week's wild weather. In Hokitika, part of Hoffman Street is underwater. Several houses are surrounded by water. Many garages are partly submerged. Keith lives on the corner and is keeping a close eye on the water, which is not far from his garage foundations.
And again, you've got the roads up banked up like that, and there's no place for the water to go, you see. But anyway, such is life.
Keith hasn't been able to get to work today yet. His cars are trapped in the garage.
The guy down there, he's getting out of his garage, but no, I go to work as soon as it goes down a bit, so I can get my car out. But
you'll be basically stuck here until the water goes down a little bit.
Yes.
As we talk, we can see one of the apples from Keith's apple trees bobbing down the street. At its deepest, the water reaches my thighs. Around the corner, the house of retirees Ross and Joss is partially surrounded by the floodwaters. Their front and rear gardens now resembling a swimming pool of sorts.
Rain.
And flooding.
And what sort of flooding have you seen around your place?
Just mainly the front lawn and the back lawn as usual. Not being able to get out on the footpath because there is no footpath, it's underwater.
But they say they are more worried for their neighbours, who are completely flooded out.
Well, they've only been here a couple of weeks, 3 weeks or so, so they've brought this house, come from a place that's bone dry, like Roxburgh or somewhere, and all of a sudden, wham,
Several homes here are completely flooded. One such homeowner, who didn't want to be identified, said he was at his wits' end.
3 o'clock it started coming in the house, 3:30. 4 o'clock, it was like this. So, pretty quick. Yeah, and there was nothing else we could do about it. 7-year-old kid, she thought it was a big adventure. And, it's just, what are you going to do? What could we do? So it was just do the best we could and get out of here. No help from council. Those signs that you see out on the street, they weren't there until daylight this morning. We had hoons coming through here, big bow waves, so there's been no help.
But what is most frustrating to these homeowners is that flooding here seems to be getting more and more common.
Perhaps 3 times in the last 5 years we've had to put up with this. Yeah, it's not good, but, I'm paying my rates, so surely it should be controlled.
And the other times it does flood, do we see a similar scene like this? What does it look like?
It's been worse. This is not so bad this time. We've had it a foot in the garage, deep. All the lawnmowers and that had to be resurfaced. But it's only just started over the last 5 years here on this intersection, on this block. I don't know why.
But in the meantime, these residents are waiting for these floodwaters to go down so they can mop up and return to normality. On the west coast for Checkpoint, Logan Church.
And if you're listening on the radio, that piece from Logan will go up online if you want to have a look at the damage done by the force of the water, the downed fences there and broken roads, very sodden indeed. West Coast residents say floodwaters have washed away a lifeline for their community after torrential rain battered the coast for 2 days. The Waiho Bridge on State Highway 6 collapsed, sending twisted metal and concrete into the river as the water surged past. It's a busy tourist route and the main transport link for Franz Joseph to the rest of southern Westland for farmers, businesses and residents. Tess Brunton reports.
Eco Rafting Adventures Director Kristen Markin says her West Coast business closed its doors early as customers were forced to cancel.
Once the bridge closed down, we had so many cancellations that we've just made the executive decision to close 3 weeks early for the season. The rivers that we raft quite a few on the coast. They come up really high and then they drop really fast as well.
It's a 25-odd-minute drive from Fox Glacier to Franz Joseph when the bridge is intact. Without it, and suddenly motorists are faced with hundreds of extra kilometres as they're forced to drive around the Aoraki Mount Cook National Park and through Arthur's Pass, a roughly 12-hour journey. Glacier Country Tourism Group chairperson Ashley Casson says up to 1 million people travel around the West Coast each year.
Pretty significant lifeline for us in terms of the ability to go south. A lot of the suppliers come through from Wanaka or Queenstown up to Fox and through to Franz. Vice versa, others come down from Hokitika or Greymouth through to Fox or Franz. So you're effectively cutting, South Western in half.
Mr Casson says some businesses in the tourism, hospitality and dairy industries will be hit hard by the closure. He wouldn't put a price tag on the financial cost of the bridge loss, but says it will be significant. Mr Casson says about 50 Franz Joseph residents are stuck on the south side of the Waiho River.
The benefit of living in a town that has the heaviest flow helicopter airport in the country is there's a lot of helicopters here and there's a lot of companies willing to put their machines in the air to support civil defence or support getting supplies around. So a nice tight-knit communities there to support each other, but not ideal.
Tourism West Coast Chief Executive Jim Little says businesses in the area will be hit financially, but he hopes it will be short-lived.
Communities can still connect going south. So basically from Fox Township right through to Lake Harware they can all connect once the flooding goes away, and from Franz north they can all connect. It's just a little bit in the middle.
He hopes it won't take too long to fix the bridge.
It's a Bailey Bridge, which were invented during the Second World War as a quick fix for bridges that were bombed out throughout Europe. So it's like a giant Meccano set, and so long as the river piles are okay, it could be up fairly quickly. So in the meantime, come and enjoy the West Coast. From Franz north and Fox south, it's business as usual.
West Coast farmer Pete Dennehy grazes about 400 beef cattle on the land to the south of the Waiho River. His farm flooded yesterday as up to 800 millimetres of rain fell in the region within 24 hours. Mr Dennehy says authorities didn't do enough to maintain the bridge and he doubts it will be a quick fix.
They wait for things to happen and then there's action, but there's no preventative maintenance going on. That's the sad part of it. This was a massive flood, but there were warnings put out about the bridge approach. I know that for a fact. That they were warned that the approach to the north side of the Waiho Bridge needed attention. Nothing done. Stop banks needed attention, nothing done.
Without the bridge, he says it will be difficult to transport milk, produce and other supplies up and down the coast. Mr Dennehy says the West Coast seems to hit a major disaster every year or two, so prevention needs to be a priority.
The Wanganui Bridge only a couple of years ago was a classic case of that as well. They were told about that approach, that it needed attention, not done, so the bridge was washed out. It cost millions and millions of dollars. The maintenance on the bridge is minor compared to the loss for the tourism, the tourist operators, the farmers, everybody loses.
The Westland District Council referred questions about the Waiho Bridge to the Transport Agency. In 2016, the Transport Agency planned to raise the Waiho River Bridge by 2 metres, spending $1.6 million, but none of the tenders were accepted. Agency Systems Manager Pete Connors says the riverbed levels reduced so the bridge didn't need to be boosted. He says the bridge will be replaced by another Bailey, costing about $1 million, because it can be adjusted and adapted to the changing river.
The Bailey in its very essence is a temporary bridge, and basically we've had a Bailey at this crossing since 1990. So the reason we have a Bailey there is the volatility of this river, It's probably the South Island's most volatile catchment.
Mr Connors hopes the bridge will be replaced in the next 7 to 10 days. For Checkpoint, Cortes Brunton, Tane.
It is 19 after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We'd love to hear from you. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Particularly if you're on the West Coast there cleaning up, let us know how it's going and if that bridge outage affects you. The Prime Minister has spoken at the Dunedin Mosque that was the original target of the accused gunman during her first visit to the city since the Christchurch attacks. She was inundated with love from the Muslim community there as further revelations emerged about the alleged shooter's links to the far right in Austria. Timothy Brown filed this report.
Wherever Jussie Ardern stepped foot in Dunedin, members of the Muslim community poured forth to embrace her. The Prime Minister has garnered global support for the caring way she has interacted with New Zealand's Muslim community in the wake of the attacks. But today in Dunedin, the shoe was on the other foot. She spoke to the congregation at Al Huda Mosque in private before addressing media.
One of the things that I've been very aware of, this was the city where the perpetrator of the terrorist attack in Christchurch was living at the time, and the Muslim community here were acutely aware of that. I wanted to come to visit with them, to hear and talk about their concerns and just have a chance for listening, really.
Jussie Ardern says she has been heartened to hear the stories of support from the community.
There was one woman in the room who said she had lived in New Zealand for more than a decade, but she had never felt more at home than she had in the last 10 days. And I find that such an astounding message in the wake of what the community has experienced.
The Prime Minister says she's provided assurances to the community about what is being done to ensure their safety going forward. Ms Ardern says the armed police presence will remain for some time, but all New Zealanders have a duty of care.
Our job is to make sure that the community and New Zealand as a whole knows that safety is our number one priority and to give that sense of security. Equally, members of the community everywhere can give that sense of security as well.
Jussie Ardern also visited An-Nur childcare centre in the south of Dunedin. The centre is owned by Muhammad Al-Ayan, whose son Atta Al-Ayan was killed in the Christchurch Mosque massacre. Dr Al-Ayan himself was injured in the attack. The Prime Minister read The Hungry Caterpillar to the children and spent time with parents. Overnight, it emerged Austrian authorities have searched the home of prominent far-right activist Martin Sellner, who leads the anti-immigration identitarian movement of Austria. He received a donation, reportedly of more than $2,000, from the accused gunman. Ms Ardern told reporters she hasn't spoken to Austrian authorities, but was otherwise tight-lipped about Brenton Tarrant's links to the country.
Do you know the date that the alleged gunman made his donation to Martin Sellner's far-right group in Austria?
No, unfortunately I do not know.
Do we know if he's made any other similar donations to other groups?
Again, this is a level of operational detail that I would prefer, given the ongoing investigations by police, to leave to them.
The minister responsible for the SIS and the GCSB, Andrew Little, also kept mum when speaking to Morning Report on the subject today.
I've been briefed on the means that he had access to afford that travel. More recent briefings have talked about his background, but I think it's important for the police and the agency supporting them to be able to assemble their case to secure that criminal conviction.
Martin Sellner has denied having anything to do with the massacre. Foreign media have reported he confirmed receiving the comparatively large donation early last year. Brenton Tarrant is known to have travelled through Europe, including Austria, late last year. In Dunedin, for Checkpoint, Timothy Brown.
The Christchurch Muslim community is still seeking out people who were at the mosques during the shooting attacks to see if they need counselling. As more and more people come forward to tell their stories, community leaders say there are others who may have kept away from the hospital and the mosque since the attack out of fear or because they don't have physical injuries. ACC confirmed today that there are 12 people that are not covered for their mental injuries, but it says counselling will be available to all. Alex Perrottet and cameraman Stan McFerrier report.
For some people in the Al-Nur Mosque during the attack, like Josef Vohar, it's a sheer miracle they survived at all.
I was underneath the dead bodies. I could have got a shot easily, but he did not will it for me to get a shot. It was maybe for some reason that I got saved. I missed the bullets because I could feel the bullets on the one who was in front of me. I could feel the bullets actually pushing on the body. I could feel that it's missed my head, it's missed my chest, it's missed my leg.
Many victims say the mental scars are deep and when they shut their eyes, it all keeps coming back. Abdul Rahiman was in the mosque and managed to escape out one of the back doors.
That incident of that day is just still fresh in my mind. And when I came here, actually I came here on Saturday when the mosque was open to the public with my son, and we did a small prayer inside. And now, like, this is the first time for me to come this area from the door which I managed to escape, yeah. And it's, yeah, I don't have words. Like, I just feel that everything is all, well, you know, fresh. Everything is happening, is still happening.
We're just outside that back door where Abdul and many others managed to escape. They came running along here towards a wall. Abdul says many of them were young and fit enough to be able to jump straight over that wall, but he couldn't manage. So he hid in the car park amongst the parked cars to escape the gunman and at least hide from him. He encouraged many others to do the same. We did speak to another man, a taxi driver, who also couldn't manage to get over the wall. He came running down this pathway here and he stood on this old white brittle plastic chair. It crushed underneath him. He eventually found some wood and used that to get up and over the wall. Meanwhile, Abdul, who was hiding amongst the cars, was eventually rescued by the police. He says, unfortunately, many of his friends weren't so lucky.
I had some friends and a couple of family, they got injured and they're still in the hospital. Yeah, a lot of friends, they have just gone, yeah. Up till now, the support we have been given by the Christchurch community as a whole, it has been quite marvelous, tremendous, I think. And like the police force, they are doing very good job from the time they rescued us from the car park and they took us to the hospital and even now. And I think like we need this continued support, like yeah, and some counselling maybe those affected.
The Ministry of Social Development says it's helped 628 applicants, paying out $159,000 so far. Phil Riley from ACC says it's received just over 100 injury claims. 53 are due to gunshot wounds. And of the 27 claims for mental injuries, there are 12 people that don't qualify for cover. But Mr Riley assured they will get help.
Support is available, and I think that's the key message, that counselling support is available regardless of cover of ACC at this point. What I described was the boundaries of ongoing entitlements. ACC covers for mental injury if it's a result of a physical injury or if it's in the course of employment. That is the current boundaries, but I stress again, counselling is available for those that need it.
Abdul says he is getting some counselling. He's had one session last week and has another one tomorrow, but he will need ongoing support, and he's thankful his cousin, Hussein Bucks, is visiting from Sydney.
My concern was my brother. So, considering my brother and the people, and I said it's sort of like an icon, and I have come here to pay my tribute.
I'm really moved by his kind words, and yeah, I really appreciate for him to come and meet me here, and actually he just came to meet me here and see the places and just to, you know, pay tribute.
And as Abdul comes to terms with what has happened, he says family is what's important and he's taking time off just to be with people like Hussein.
Come and visit us for a while.
Thank you very much.
Get out of this, you know, get over it. But I think the wound is still, you know, take time to heal.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Years and years. But I pray to Allah that this will not ever happen in New Zealand anymore.
Hussein Bucks ending that report, and anyone affected by the terror attacks can call victim support on 0800 842 846, 0800 842 846. And more details have been made public about the National Remembrance service for the victims of the terrorist attacks. That will be held on Friday in Hagley Park. Now, the service, which will be broadcast by RNZ and TVNZ, will begin at 10 o'clock. Our reporter, Alex Perrottet, is in the Hagley Park. Alex, what other details can you tell us about the service?
Kia ora, Lisa. I'm here in North Hagley Park. You can see just over my shoulder the workers working on that massive stage, which will host some pretty headline acts. We just heard today that Cat Stevens, otherwise known as Yusuf Islam, due to his fairly high-profile conversion to the Islamic faith, will be here and will be performing. There's all sorts of speculation about what songs he might perform. Peace Train has been offered as one, and he'll be here alongside Marlon Williams. There'll be other performers, Maisie Rika, Holly Smith, Teeks. We're expecting a lot of people here. There's fences right down the end, thousands upon thousands due to pour in on Friday before the 10 a.m. service. Speaking just casually to police officers around the place in the last few days, there's a bit of apprehension just about holding such a huge amount of people in one place. Very, very tight security. People are advised to give plenty of time before they get here on Friday.
Yeah, and are people who want to go being given any other tips? Because I imagine bags will be an issue and things like that.
Indeed, Lisa. The people have been told not to bring any bags at all because that will really slow the security process in order to get in. They're also told just to walk, park far away if you're driving a car. Otherwise, just leave the car at home, take public transport. You could also use a bike or an e-scooter if you've got one, or you can hire one. But also just to leave plenty of time to get here. And yes, as explained, leave the bags at home. And during the next, I guess, 24 hours, there'll be other information provided about maps, other detail about how to get here before what's going to be a really big occasion. Lots and lots of people here, organised by Ngāi Tahu on behalf of Hokitika, also with the Muslim community, and they've got extra help with the New Zealand government as well as the Christchurch Council.
Thanks, Alex. That's Alex Perrottet in Hagley Park there with details of the Remembrance service, which is going to be held on Friday starting at 10 a.m. And coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, a survivor of the Al Noor Mosque attack who was shot twice while trying to protect his son speaks from his hospital bed. Gun control advocates across the Tasman warn other governments to watch out for the US gun lobby. And the giant leap for womankind that, well, it tripped NASA up. We'll have details of that, and we would love your feedback. Text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or just a plain old email would be great. checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Time for the headlines now.
A woman who died in the West Coast's biggest flood since 1982 has been named as Gloria Reardon Hurst of Arahura Valley, north of Hokitika. The 66-year-old was killed when she was swept away by floodwaters, and her body was found this morning. The region has been deluged with up to 800 millimetres of rain, flooding rivers and destroying the Waiho River Bridge near Franz Joseph Township. Apart from the stretch between the glaciers, State Highway 6 is now open. A service planned in Waikato to remember the victims of the Christchurch mosque attacks has been cancelled due to the heightened security risk. It was to be held at Tūranga Waiwai Marae in Ngāroa Wahia during the live broadcast of Friday's National Remembrance service. The Waikato District Mayor says the police have advised it's not possible to stage an event at the marae. The Reserve Bank is warning it may cut interest rates because of a worsening economic outlook. The official cash rate was held at an expected record low of 1.75% today. A strong local economy had been offsetting a soft international outlook for the past 2 years. But the Governor, Adrian Orr, says he is worried about a deteriorating outlook for key trading partners. Auckland health authorities have contacted more than 900 people who may have been exposed to measles. There are 9 confirmed cases in the city so far, with nearly 60 people in quarantine as a precaution. Auckland Medical Officer of Health, William Ranger, says more cases are expected, but it isn't yet classed as an outbreak. There are 35 confirmed cases of measles in Christchurch. An article in an Otago University student magazine has prompted dozens more complaints about sexual harassment and assaults at university hostel. 4 women spoke about their experiences at Knox College between 2011 and 2017 in Critic magazine, accusing the management of failing to deal with what they call a misogynistic culture. Critic writer Esme Hall says since the article was published, more than 30 people have come forward with more allegations, some current and others dating back 12 years. Those are the headlines. We'll have our next news and weather update at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. Time for business now with Nona Peltier. Nona, Reserve Bank, as we heard there in the headlines, has held the official cash rate 1.75%. But what's the next move likely?
Well, Okay, so that the rate has been held at 1.75% isn't a surprise, but the negative tone, the concern that was raised by the Reserve Bank was somewhat surprising to the market. That wasn't necessarily priced in, and so we saw a significant fall in the value of the currency, keeping in mind, of course, that it was quite strong. So it's now, about 68 cents, just when I looked a little while ago, and that's against the US dollar. Now, that might seem, wow, that's a big, huge drop. I think it was like 1.6%, which is a fairly good whack. But at the same time, we saw our share market rise, I think 1.3%. So that was a huge rise up. And so we've seen the inverse happening. As soon as people thought, oh my goodness, the Reserve Bank might cut interest rates, let's put our money into shares and out of interest. And so that's what we saw, quite a big shift this afternoon. So people moving around their investments to reflect that. So what's going to happen from here? Look, the global economic conditions have deteriorated. We've seen that it's happening in Europe, it's happening in Australia, it's happening in China, it's happening in the United States. The U.S. Federal Reserve recently went from talking about raising interest rates, as you know, we've talked about this lots of times, to saying, oh, okay, we're not going to raise rates. Some of the global economic indicators point to even a rate cut in the United States. That's how bad things have got internationally, and very quickly. So there's a lot at play here. The trade conditions are one thing. We've talked about that. All these things now are not just things we can talk about. We can now look around the world and see them starting to play out. And so the Reserve Bank is getting ahead of that. Will they cut rates the next time we have a monetary policy statement? I don't think so. That's not what the market is expecting. And the reason why is that we're on April 1st, we're going to have a committee. And that committee is going to be wanting to look at, the information before the Reserve Bank. A decision is unlikely, of course. That depends, I guess, on what happens globally. But more likely, we're going to see a rate cut maybe in August, possibly also November. And the market is starting to price that in, maybe 2 rate cuts this year. Luckily, the Reserve Bank has some movement there. We're at 1.75. We could move down to, say, 1.25. That would take us, we would expect to see that. However, the New Zealand dollar is still under pressure, and not downward pressure. It's got upward pressure behind it. And you can expect to see the Kiwi fly back again beyond 68 cents.
Interesting times, if you have said. Yeah. Mercury, okay, so they are stepping up in the area of renewable energy. But what exactly are they doing?
Well, they're going to develop a wind farm that they had consents for a while now. So they don't have to go and get any consents for this.
Yeah, because they're controversial, aren't they?
They are. But you know what? Mercury is into renewable energy. That's what they're all about. And they're going to build 33 wind turbines on its site in Palmerston North. Now, that's just an opener. They're going to spend $256 million on that. That's a significant initial investment. But overall, we're talking about $1 billion probably when it's all said and done, because they can build up to 60 on that site, and they can build another 53 on an adjacent site. And that's what they're looking to do. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to look at other investments. They have a wind farm investment that they recently took up in Australia. They bought a 20% stake in Tilt Renewables, which they own with Infratil. They're going to be developing that too. So yeah, watch this space. I think you're going to see Mercury doing a whole lot more than that. And the market was happy. They looked at the Mercury's announcement, and their share price rose 2.6%, up 10 cents to $3.93, which is, ahead of the market movement, which was also quite large. So overall, our index rose, 1.33%. That's 124 points up. That's the biggest uprise since the beginning of the year to, of course, a record close of 9,699. Now, compared with the ASX 200, at 5 o'clock, it was down. And it was down when I just looked a few minutes ago as well. Now, our dollar trading at 68 US cents. So yesterday was 69. 95.7. Yesterday, we were at 97 Australian, and 51.6 pence versus 52.4 yesterday. That gives you an idea of how much we see movement. It's a big day in the market for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Nona. Appreciate you joining us. Nona Pelsier with Business there. Christchurch locals are being urged to remain vigilant after a police standoff that ended with the death of a 54-year-old man overnight. The police were called to a parked vehicle near Richmond Park, where they found the man critically injured with apparent stab wounds. It follows the discovery of several several guns at a property in the suburb of St Martin's. As Tom Furley reports, the police are now investigating whether there are any links to the mosque attacks.
On a quiet suburban Christchurch street, a red flower lies in the middle of the road. It's in the centre of a ring of spray paint, a marker of where a man's body lay this morning. At the opposite end of the street, broken glass is strewn across the road. The commotion began shortly after midnight when the 54-year-old sought in relation to guns found in a search the day before was found parked up next to Richmond Park. Chrissy Bennett lives less than 100 metres from where he was parked and was woken shortly before 1 o'clock by police dogs barking and armed police swarming the street.
There was a vehicle down the bottom of the street and they asked him to put his hands up and get out of the car, and then we heard one of the armed offenders say, I can't see his hands, I can't see his hands, and so they sort of backed off.
The police helicopter circled overhead with a searchlight, attracting the attention of many in the area, including Shirley Boys High School principal John Lawrenson, who was in the office by 3 a.m.
Idiot that I am, I thought, oh, that's interesting. Wandered out to the quad and happily waved at them while they shone the searchlight on me, and thought, oh, well, this is quite exciting for an old fellow like me. Never really thought much of it, and then wandered back in my office and thought to myself, well, I suppose the worst scenario would have been men on ropes coming down with machine guns on the back, ready to take out the old fella that was standing there.
Chrissy Bennett says there was loud bangs as police deployed gas shortly before 4.
We heard an armed offender go, stay still and I'll take the dog or pull the dog off. And then the next thing we knew, they were running down here and they had someone between them but not upright, and he was put down on the road.
The police say when they approached the car shortly before 4, they found the man was critically injured with what appeared to be a stab wound. A knife was found later in the vehicle and Defence Force bomb squad were brought in to ensure the car was safe. The man died at the scene. Police Commissioner Mike Bush says it was public vigilance that alerted police to suspicious behaviour. A high-priority investigation is underway to determine whether the man posed a threat to the community. While there was no evidence to suggest he had any involvement in the attack on mosques almost 2 weeks ago, Mr Bush says it will form an important part of their investigation. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Tom Furley.
Gun control advocates across the Tasman are warning governments they need to be aware of the increasing global reach of the US gun lobby. It comes after the release of secret recordings by the news agency Al Jazeera showing senior officials from Pauline Hanson's One Nation political party seeking millions of dollars in political donations from the influential National Rifle Association. The officials now claim they're the victims of a set-up. The ABC's Thomas Ariti reports.
Gun control advocate Rebecca Peters says she was surprised to see the footage involving One Nation officials. But when it comes to tactics used by the National Rifle Association, she says she's heard it all before.
We know them from years of interaction with them to be absolutely hard-nosed, ruthless and self-serving.
Rebecca Peters led a campaign for gun law reform in the 1990s in the wake of the Port Arthur massacre. She's since worked on gun control campaigns around the world.
The NRA is advising the One Nation people that they should respond to a mass shooting by shaming them, by accusing gun control advocates of making use of children's deaths. That is pretty rich coming from the NRA, which itself clearly cares very little about the deaths of 40,000 people a year in the US.
Fronting a media scrum in Brisbane yesterday, James Ashby and Steve Dixon said they'd had a few drinks and claimed they were set up by a secret agent from the Middle East. LNP Senator for Queensland, Matt Canavan, has told Sky News this morning he has his doubts.
This is remarkable. You have a party called One Nation going to another nation to try and influence our nation's laws. This has exposed One Nation as absolute frauds.
On Sydney's 2GB, One Nation's new Upper House MP in New South Wales, Mark Latham, condemned the Al Jazeera investigation.
I think it's quite remarkable that a news agency headed by a guy who came from the ABC, now working for this Arabic news outfit, would spend 3 years paying someone to deliberately deceive, lie, spy, connive and set up these Queensland One Nation officials.
In the meantime, big players in the Australian gun lobby are distancing themselves from One Nation. Laura Patterson is from the Shooting Industry Foundation of Australia.
Look, we think One Nation is either extremely naive or extremely arrogant, both of which are not a good look for Australian politicians.
The foundation's released a statement saying it has no ties and no contact with any international groups that would seek to interfere in Australian democracy. And at the same time, the progressive think tank, the Australia Institute, has released a report this morning saying the Australian gun lobby is as large and spends as much on political donations and campaigns per capita as the NRA. Bill Brown is the report's author.
There's a similar pattern of spending, so that political donations, those to parties and candidates, make up a relatively small amount of the expenditure, while a much larger portion goes on political campaigns.
But just how much money does the NRA actually have? New York-based politics professor Robert Spitzer has written 5 books on gun control and gun policy.
The NRA is pretty strapped financially. They do not have to reveal their finances openly and completely by any means, but there are a number of indications that they're really hurting financially right now.
For gun control advocate Rebecca Peters, this investigation is a telling sign.
It shows that just like the global weapons industry, the global pro-weapons lobby is also increasingly something that we need to look at from the point of view of the whole world.
And that was gun control advocate Rebecca Peters ending that report from the ABC's Thomas Oriti. It is 5:45. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. As always, we would love to hear from you. Text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. What should have been a giant leap for womankind has turned into a stumble on the path to equality. US space agency NASA has cancelled the first all-female spacewalk due to a lack of a spacesuit in the right size. Linda So reports.
Astronauts Anne McClain and Christina Cook won't be walking in space together after all.
Anne McClain near the top of your screen.
NASA has nixed the first ever all-female spacewalk because there's only one suit aboard the International Space Station that fits both women.
Flying towards the International Space Station.
After her spacewalk with Nick Hague last week, NASA says McClain learned that the medium-sized inner part of the spacesuit she wore fits her best, better than the larger one she had previously thought would work. But the medium is what fits Cook best too, and there's only one part in that size aboard the space station. NASA has decided that Cook will be the one to wear it on Friday's spacewalk.
I couldn't ask for a better team.
McClain, who'll be replaced by Hague, will remain inside the ISS.
Nick Hague at the bottom of your screen.
It will be the second spacewalk in a series of 3.
All right, we see you guys.
The astronauts will continue the work of installing lithium-ion batteries for one pair of the station's solar panels that help keep the ISS up and running.
Linda So reporting there, and how disappointing would that be? And in case you're wondering, nearly 60 years after the first human blasted off into space, less than 11% of the 500 plus people who have travelled to space have been women. From top to bottom, this is not on the level. That's the reaction of Chicago's mayor after a court dismissed all charges against the American actor Jussie Smollett. The 32-year-old star of the TV series Empire was accused of staging a hate crime against himself and was charged with filing a fake police report. Prosecutors recommended the charges be dismissed and the judge sealed the case. The reasons still aren't clear and the decision has outraged city authorities, as CNN's Brian Todd reports.
In a case that Jussie Smollett's lawyer says had spiraled out of control, a sudden, dramatic and bizarre turn. Prosecutors announced they've dropped all the charges against the actor. Smollett repeated his claims of innocence.
I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of.
The announcement angered Chicago's police superintendent, who says he was taken by surprise.
Do I think justice was served? No. I think this city is still owed an apology. It's Mr. Smollett who committed this hoax, period. I stand by the facts of what we produced.
Mayor Rahm Emanuel stood by his police chief.
This is a whitewash of justice.
In late January, Smollett told police he was attacked on the streets of Chicago by two men shouting racist and homophobic slurs, who he claimed poured an unknown substance on him and put a noose around his neck. Police spent more than 1,000 man-hours on the case, interviewed more than 100 people, checked more than 50 surveillance cameras. Two Nigerian brothers, Olabinjo and Abimbola Osundero, who'd been extras on Smollett's TV drama Empire, were taken into custody. Police later said they believed Smollett paid the two brothers $3,500 to orchestrate the attack.
Of course, it was staged. The brothers had on gloves during the staged attack where they punched him a little bit. But as far as we can tell, the scratches and bruising that you saw on his face was most likely self-inflicted.
Prosecutors allege Smollett was in contact with the brothers in the days before the incident, texting one of them, quote, "Might need your help on the low. You around to talk face-to-face?" And they say the actor spoke to the brothers an hour after the alleged attack. Smollett always proclaimed his innocence, and in an interview with ABC, he vented his anger at how the investigation had turned.
I'm pissed off. How can you doubt that? Like, how do you not believe that? It's the truth.
A week later, police arrested Smollett on suspicion of filing a false police report. He faced 16 counts. The key question tonight, why the charges were dropped, still hangs in the air, following a murky explanation from prosecutors.
This was a just disposition in the case.
Assistant Cook County State's Attorney Joe Maggots said prosecutors did not exonerate Smollett. Maggots says prosecutors saw no problems with the police investigation or the evidence, that they simply don't see Smollett as a threat to public safety, and he offered another explanation.
We dropped all charges based on the fact that he did community service and that he forfeited his bail.
Chicago Attorney Joe Maggot ending that report from CNN's Brian Todd. Authorities are doing their best to quarantine people who have had contact with measles, but it isn't always easy to get them to comply, with some even deliberately venturing out to places like supermarkets. There have been 61 confirmed cases of the highly infectious disease nationwide, with another 31 potential cases under investigation around the country. More than half of the confirmed cases are in Canterbury. In Auckland alone, 59 people are being quarantined to their homes. Amy Williams reports.
Auckland Regional Public Health Service says there have been 9 confirmed cases of measles in Auckland, from a 1-year-old baby to people in their 40s. One woman with measles is in isolation, but she was infectious when she visited 2 supermarkets and a cafe in Silverdale and Orewa last week. People in Silverdale were concerned about the risk of measles spreading.
That's kind of gross.
Yeah,
I think she should have stayed home, because if a measles outbreak gets bad, then it's going to affect everyone that hasn't had measles.
I have a child, so I worry for him mostly.
I mean, isn't it quite highly infectious? So that's not a good thing. I'm pretty sure you should just stay away from the public.
Me and my family were immunised, and there's probably hundreds of diseases going around out there that you wouldn't even know about. I mean, airports, restaurants, all sorts of things you visit all the time. So I think it's just a bit of a thing at the moment, because vaccination is such a hot topic at the moment.
It's been 2 years since New Zealand was rid of endemic measles for the first time, meaning any new cases are brought in from overseas. Public health authorities are working to stop the disease spreading. Auckland Medical Officer of Health, William Ranger, says health authorities have been in touch with another 900 people who may have been in contact with the 9 people confirmed to have measles in Auckland, while others known to have had contact have been asked to stay at home.
We've got 59 cases, people who are in quarantine at the moment. So that's people we're asking to stay at home during the incubation period in case they develop measles. So it's a reasonably large number of people that we're following up at the moment. And our objective is to prevent the spread of the virus further in the community.
Dr Ranger says health authorities expect more cases of the disease imported into Auckland, but it is not yet an outbreak.
Whether we are going to get sustained transmission from person to person within Auckland, we don't know if that's going to happen yet. That's when numbers would start to go up quickly. We're not in that state at the moment.
Of the 31 potential measles cases under investigation, 5 are in Canterbury, another 5 are in Auckland, and the others are scattered throughout the country. ESR public health physician Jill Sherwood says not all of these cases will be measles.
Some of those cases will end up being shown to not be measles. When we have outbreaks as we're having at the moment, family doctors tend to be very good about notifying anything that is suspected of being measles. They're requested to do this. It's good practice because it's better to not miss a case.
One of the main factors preventing measles becoming commonplace again is if 95% of the population is immune. Dr. Sherwood says our immunisation rate is not high enough to stop measles becoming endemic here again.
The better the vaccination rates that you're able to put out there, it's a bit like building fire breaks. When there's a fire, the more chances that set of people won't come into contact with people who are not immune, and therefore it will die out.
Meanwhile, the Auckland Primary Principals Association President Craig Holt says schools in the region are moderately concerned about the measles outbreak. He says schools are keeping an eye out for any cases of measles. The Ministry of Education says it hasn't been notified of any measles cases in Auckland schools, early childhood centres or kura. For Checkpoint, Ko Amy Williams, Tēnei.
An Auckland man who broke his jaw after the Lime scooter he was riding randomly braked said the companies offered him 3 free rides as compensation for his injuries. Leon Thompson was riding a Lime home after picking up food for his son's first birthday nearly 6 weeks ago when the scooter he was riding jammed up, sending him flying onto the footpath. He broke his jaw and was covered in scrapes and bruises. He's since had 2 surgeries and has been on a liquid diet for the past 6 weeks, and he estimates he's lost around 10 kilograms. Liam spoke to our reporter Nita Blake-Person about his recovery and Lime's response.
They gave me a big apology over the phone and I got to talk to a few people, but that's about it. I got three rides from Lime, which I didn't end up using.
Did they refund you for the ride which you injured yourself on?
No, nothing was refunded. They didn't accept any liability, and all they offered me was an apology.
What did they say in that apology?
It was just pretty much, I was talking to a lady for about 20 minutes about how it shouldn't happen again and what they're going to do in the future to help other riders. And yeah, just a heartful apology from her and her team and everyone at the branch in California.
So what are they going to do to protect riders?
Well, apparently they said they're going to do a few updates, which I think they have. I haven't been keeping up with it on the news, but I think they've done a few updates, and it got taken off the road for about 2 weeks, and they all got looked at, and yeah, I wasn't sure exactly what they're doing, but hopefully something better for whoever else is going to be riding them.
Is their response to your situation been good enough, do you think?
Oh, well, I'm not sure how these things get handled, especially as overseas and all, but no, it didn't really help me out in any way. Doesn't prevent me from having an accident that's already happened, but hopefully for the people who are going to be on it in the future, hopefully they're going to be a bit safer than they were before.
You've incurred quite a bit of financial setback through being off work or also the pain and things involved. Would you have expected them to step up a bit more?
Yeah, I would have expected a little bit of help, but, you know, if they would have helped me, that would have been them accepting responsibility and saying that it was their fault. But I don't think they can or will say that, so I just have to take it on the chin and move on, I guess.
Is it disappointing?
Yeah, it's very disappointing, but this is our world, you know, this is what's happened. It's not just me, I'm sure there's plenty of other people who have injured themselves who've gotten nothing.
Do you have any estimate of how much this whole ordeal has cost you?
Oh, probably only a couple of grand at the most.
Makes for quite an expensive Lime ride though, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Will you be using the free rides?
No, not at all. I'll even stay away from those wave ones too, just in case.
And that's Liam Thompson, who was talking to Nita Blake-Person there. He was offered 3 free Lime rides after he broke his jaw when the brakes locked up on the Lime scooter he was riding. Let us know what you think about that, 2101 on the text. And we've got time for a little bit of your feedback now, and much of it relates to an earlier report of ours on the shootings at the mosques, in which the reporter named the accused gunman. This from Robert. Thanks for your great coverage of the event and your focus on the victims. Your reporter in Dunedin used the accused name twice in one report tonight. Could you please continue not to give him the dignity of giving him a name? And Erica says, could I please request that RNZ honours the pledge of our Prime Minister to never name the accused of the mosque shootings? And she says his name should not be broadcast again. There's no need to name him. And as a public, as I'm sure the public of New Zealand would understand that, she says. Just while we're on the topic of those shootings, I just want to point you in the direction of 2 podcasts that may be of interest. One is a mental health podcast called Eating Fried Chicken, and in that there's a discussion with Dr. Saab Johal about handling our shared grief and complicated rush of emotions after those Christchurch shootings. There is also a new episode of the history podcast Black Sheep, and that looks into our very complicated history of white supremacy in New Zealand.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Lei a tāua tēnei. The worst of the wild weather is over on the west coast, but the big dump of rain has left paddocks waterlogged and debris stuck in fences. The flooding has also claimed the life of a local woman who was the victim of strong river currents. Sarah Robson is just north of Hokitika.
The police say 66-year-old Gloria Reardon-Hurst was swept away in floodwaters on Arahura Valley Road after she got out of her car. Her body was recovered just before 9:30 this morning. The road where she was swept away has had the tar seal lifted off it. While water levels have dropped, many paddocks in lower parts of the valley are still underwater. The force of the water flowing through the area overnight has flattened the grass, and large amounts of debris have been left tangled in fences. Ko Sarah Robson, aho.
A planned service in Waikato to remember the victims of the Christchurch terrorist attacks has been cancelled due to the heightened security risk. It was to be held in Ngaruawahia at Tūranga Waiwai Marae for people to watch the live broadcast of Friday's National Remembrance service. The Waikato District Mayor, Alan Sanson, says police advised the council that it's not possible to stage an event at the marae. He says people can still watch the live broadcast in their homes or at work. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has met with Muslim leaders at the Al Huda Mosque in Dunedin to listen to their concerns and share a message of safety and inclusion. The accused shooter had lived in the city and had identified the North Dunedin Mosque online as the original target for the March 15th shootings. Ms Ardern says most of the people she spoke to talked of the overwhelming love and support they'd received since the attack.
There was one woman in the room who said she had lived in New Zealand for more than a decade, but she had never felt more at home than she had in the last 10 days. And I find that such an astounding message in the wake of what the community has experienced.
Jacinda Ardern earlier visited Anua Childcare Centre in the south of the city. More than 900 people who may have been exposed to measles have been contacted by Auckland health authorities. There are 9 confirmed cases of the highly infectious disease in the city so far. The Auckland Medical Officer of Health, William Ranger, says more cases are expected, but it isn't yet classed as an outbreak. He says 59 people are in quarantine at the moment as they seek to prevent the spread of the disease. It's been 2 years since New Zealand was rid of endemic measles for the first time, meaning any new cases stem from overseas. The Reserve Bank is warning it may have to cut its benchmark interest rate if the economic outlook gets much worse. The official cash rate is held at a record low 1.75% as expected, but the central bank says the downside risks are worsening. Here's our business editor, Giles Beckford.
For more than 2 years, the Reserve Bank has held the cash rate unchanged, saying the risks have been balanced, with the solid local economy offsetting the soft world outlook. But now it's raising red flags about deepening global weakness, in particular the risk of slow growth in our big trading partners Australia and China. At home, the positives are a strong labour market, government spending and cheap money. But the downside remains weak business investment, a slower housing market and stubbornly low inflation. A rate cut or two by the end of the year is now a growing possibility. This is Giles Beckford.
Leaders of iwi and Maori fisheries are worried about climate change and how badly it may hit them. The topic was a focus at the Maori Fisheries Conference in Auckland today, where more than 300 people gathered. The chief executive of Te Ohu Kaimoana, Dion Tuta, says groups like the Iwi Chairs Forum and Maori businesses are looking at what the effects of climate change will be.
The vast majority of Maori assets and Maori business interests are still related to the primary sector, be it farming or be it fisheries. And so the more negative effects of climate change are going to have a significant impact, probably a more significant impact on the Maori community than those who aren't necessarily involved in those sectors.
Mr Tuta says they are raising their concerns with government agencies and seeking insights from other Indigenous peoples. Members of the Parihaka community are demanding Destiny Church remove the word Parihaka from their branding. More than 100 members of the church were welcomed onto Parihaka on Sunday after they requested to visit the historic pa site for their Man Up tour. They've since posted images from the visit online with the words Parihaka printed on them. The chairman of the Papakainga Trust, Tina Mason, says Parihaka does not have any connections or support the positions of the church. Other members of the community have posted messages on the Parihaka Facebook page demanding the church remove references to the pa site online. Destiny Church said all the photos were taken with permission and absolutely no offence was intended. It's 6:05. The Hurricanes have lost one All Black but gained two others for Friday night Super Rugby derby against the Crusaders. Hooker Dane Coles has suffered a minor calf injury in training and is being rested as a precaution, but halfback TJ Perenara and midfielder Nani Laumape both return after missing last week's win over the Stormers. Hurricanes coach John Plumtree says it's a shame to not have Coles as they try and reverse the ledger from their round 2 loss to the Crusaders.
Hopefully he'll be right for next week, but I wasn't going to recover in time for this week, so he's out, which is a bit disappointing, but that's the way it goes.
Meanwhile, the Crusaders have named All Blacks captain Kieran Reid in their starting lineup for the match in Wellington. Reid, who hasn't played since the All Blacks' November tour of Europe, returns after the side's loss to the Waratahs last weekend. Scott Barrett and Richie Mo'unga have also been named to return, and the Highlanders have confirmed All Blacks halfback Aaron Smith is expected to be out for around 6 weeks after suffering an ankle injury in their loss to the Blues last weekend. The former Silver Ferns veteran Temepara Bailey has been cleared to play for the Northern Stars in their ANZ Netball Premiership match against the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic later tonight. Bailey was ruled out of last week's match with a leg injury. And 36-year-old Fabio Quagliarella has become Italy's oldest goal scorer, scoring twice as Italy thrashed Liechtenstein 6-0, their 2020 European Football Championship qualifier. Denmark made a late recovery from 3-0 down to draw 3-3 draw with Switzerland. That's the news.
Weathering the storm.
Yeah, it's been pretty horrendous, to tell the truth.
There's just been so much rain, and especially at 3:30 this morning, there was an absolute downpour.
Following the money.
$1,700 that appeared to have come from the Christchurch suspect.
Tracking terror.
I have given authority to the agencies to do intrusive activities under warrant. That number will be bigger now.
Listening in. Morning Report, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, the domestic abuse charity saying employers aren't prepared for a law change which comes into force on Monday. And after 10, singer-songwriter Val Emmett on how to take a hit Broadway musical and turn it into a book. Join me, Lynn Freeman, and for Catherine Ryan after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Metzevis to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Whanganui, including central high country and Bay of Plenty. A few showers, rain with some heavy fall spreading eastwards later today and tomorrow morning, followed by showers. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, rain spreading north tonight. Manawatu to Wellington, including Wairarapa, periods of rain today. A few showers tomorrow morning, then fine spells. For Nelson and Marlborough, fine spells, isolated showers about the ranges. Canterbury, expect cloudy periods and a few showers. Bulla to Fiordland, also Otago and Southland. Mainly fine, with remaining showers clearing this evening or tomorrow morning. Chatham Islands, fine spells today. Rain tomorrow morning, clearing tomorrow afternoon. It's coming up to 6:08. You're with RNZ National.
Thanks, Susanna, and this is Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. The rain may have stopped on the west coast, but the clean-up from the massive downpour is expected to take some time. A state of emergency remains in force in Westland after record rains caused evacuations and road closures and washed away the Waiho Bridge. Among the areas hardest hit was the Ardern Valley. The body of a 66-year-old woman was pulled from floodwaters this morning. Police say they suspect she was swept away after getting out of her vehicle. The Mayor of Westland, Bruce Smith, is on the line now. Hi Bruce, appreciate you joining us at what's obviously a difficult time for the region. You've been out and about today. What do things look like now?
Well, Lisa, right at the moment, sun shining, blue skies, beautiful day, and we're still in a state of emergency, and that was probably what focused us today was the unfortunate death of the lady at Arahura, and of course the stop bank on the Waiho River on the south side was breached as well, and so the portion of the river is now washing through the airfield there, which is a real problem for us. So it's been quite an interesting day. The rivers across Westland are all dropping, and look, I believe that come tomorrow we'll be fully in the recovery mode and looking to accelerate the things we can do to get life back to normal.
How much do you think it's going to cost to clean up?
I've got absolutely no idea.
But a big bill?
It'll be a lot of money. Yeah, big bill, yeah. I don't know what a bridge costs, but NZTA will no doubt sort that out, and we met with the Civil Defence Minister today and had a briefing from NZTA who advised that 7 to 10 days we'll have a replacement bridge.
What's that going to mean in the meantime, though, for the district, which obviously relies heavily on tourism, people coming and going?
It's extremely difficult, and it's not just tourism. Our two biggest industries are tourism and dairy, and of course the milk trucks can't get across the Waiho to the farms on the south side, so they're impacted as well. But look, you can still get to Haast and you can still get to Fox from Wanaka, Queenstown, but you can't go any further, and you can still get to Franz Joseph coming through Hokitika, but you can't go any further.
So, Bruce, are those farmers having to dump their milk, are they?
Not yet. The latest release I saw was that they haven't started to dump milk yet.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So these kind of extreme weather conditions seem to be happening more and more. So what can you do to protect your vital infrastructure?
Well, this is the first time that I've seen a 100-year event occur in Haast, Franz, Harihari, Wataroa and Hokitika. This was widespread, and I've never seen that before. I've seen lots of events in one particular area or another. We can't. Nature's part of the coast. I mean, look, we all live by a river, or we all live by the sea, or we all live on a fault line, and we choose to live there. When an event like this happens, we look after ourselves and our families and our neighbours, and then we get into gear and we tidy up.
So, Bruce, you didn't sign the local government leaders' climate change declaration, did you?
No.
Has this changed your mind about anything?
No.
Why not?
Look, I'm not a person that is saying there is no such thing as climate change. In fact, I'm quite sure the climate is changing. But the document that was put around had no, look, you couldn't tell what you were expected to achieve out of it or what it was trying to do. If it had this and this and this, then we as a council could have considered it. But it was just a general indication document, and we're not into that. We've got better things to do.
When you say this and this and this, what do you mean? Particular recommendations?
it didn't have recommendations. What it wanted to do was to support something where there was no costings. You just simply couldn't tell exactly what was being asked for, and it was non-binding. And from a personal point of view, I have no problem at all with accepting climate change. Do I accept that it's driven by the human population? Not so sure about that.
Appreciate you joining us this evening. That is Bruce Smith. He's the Mayor of Westland. Big clean-up on their hands down there. One of the most severely injured victims of the Christchurch terror attacks has spoken for the first time from his hospital bed after days in intensive care. Civil engineer Sami Adib arrived in Christchurch the day before the attacks to visit his children. The 54-year-old was shot in the lower back and shoulder while lying on top of his son to protect him in the Al Noor Mosque. He told our reporter Indira Stewart and cameraman Simon Rogers he hopes to return to the mosque as soon as he is able to.
Today I'm feeling great, and to be honest, it's due to the hard work of the doctors and the nurses. They did something amazing within from Saturday till now. They get me from one step back, then they push me 3 steps forward. So I really appreciate their hard work.
Alongside the support you've been receiving and the care from the hospital, there's been an outpouring of love towards the Muslim community from all around the world and New Zealand. How are you feeling about it?
To be honest, it's amazing. I told the Christchurch Mayor when she visited me before 2 days, what we are seeing now from the community, and not only the Muslim community, all the communities, the support, the help, non-stop asking or receiving texts and messages, flowers. One guy from my work in overseas, he asked me to give him an address to send me flowers. I told him, please, I have no space in my house. So really I appreciate the support we get from the whole community. This is oppositely the guy who shoot us. He didn't expect to make that positive impact on Muslim community. Yeah.
Before you arrived at the mosque, what was your day like? Can you take me through from the moment you woke up? How were you feeling?
Yeah, it was. See, even I prepared. I wanted to, and I posted again. I wanted to post "Home Sweet Home," and I took some picture because we live in a good area, this Ruddy Cliffs. Then I said to myself, let me finish the prayer, then I will post it in the Facebook. So I went to immigration to renew my passport. Then I went to mosque. I promised Christchurch Mayor that the post I will post, and I posted yesterday. I told them this post supposed to be released on 15th of March, but unfortunately, you know what happened in a Friday that day, so I couldn't do it. But I will do it just to pass message that Christchurch will be my home, and home is sweet home, regardless what happened here in 15th of March. We will not leave anything to the shooter to give a negative impact on our life, on our community. We are good, and this what happened give us a push to be as a one community, all the New Zealanders.
Mr. Adib, where were you at the time that you got shot?
You know, when I heard the shooting, I never expected that this is real. So I stayed in my place, and you know, he shot me from the first round. And then I said to myself, oh God, this is real, and I've been shot. Yeah. When my friend, he was on my left, and he asked me, Adib, how are you feeling? I told him I got a bullet, and he said, I will help you. I am safe. I didn't get anything, but I act and I fell down, so I was happy. But unfortunately, when he came the second round, he killed him. Yeah, that was a very, very, very shocking moment to me he's a best friend. He's a best friend of mine. This is the first guy I met him when I came to New Zealand. The first time I met the guy, he was Abu Dana, Abdel Fattah. His name is Abdel Fattah. He was a brave heart, to be honest. And see, till the end of his life, he's making good. He asked me, don't worry, I will hold you. I will hold you, and I will save you. But unfortunately, he passed away. The second round, he came and shoot him. Yeah, and that one thing I can remember here, if you know, because my son was under me, so I was holding my son, and when everything finished, I saw my son is safe. Nothing happened to him. So I was so happy to hold my son and keep him safe. Also, he's a brave man. He came and in the movies we know how to act to stop the bleeding. So he put his finger on my bullet, and he stopped the bleeding until the first excited moment when I saw SWAT guys came and tell us to be sure that we are here. Don't worry, we will manage and get you, which is exactly after 4 minutes from the last round of shooting. Yeah.
How did you feel when you saw help arrive?
To be honest, I really appreciate what the guys did that day. When the SWAT came and took my son, and they told me, be careful, don't worry, we will come back. We'll come back and save you. And that it took only 3-4 minutes. Then the first hero in my life, he came and pulled me from the mosque ground, and he put me in ambulance bed. So I remember his face. I don't know his name. If he remember, I want to talk to him, because he's my first hero.
Will you return to the mosque once you're out of hospital?
Oh, of course, no. See, our mosque is our community. It's not only for religion or for praying. I want to see my friends. I want to. Of course, it will be hard when I see, we have in the mosque some places we leave it empty for X. So X guy, he will come and sit here. But unfortunately, now we lost this, so it will be very hard to saw that place without the guy who was filled these places. Yeah.
So those are spaces that would normally be saved or reserved for friends that are coming.
Yeah. Like.
And it would be sad to see those spaces empty.
Of course, you will remember that this place was filled by Abdel Fattah, and we know Abdel Fattah, as I told you, he's my friend, and we know where he's sitting normally. But now, if you go to the mosque, this place will be, filled by others. So you will remember him. I'm sure it will be hard for me to see the mosque without the guys lost their life there.
That's mosque shooting survivor Sami Adib, and he was speaking to Indira Stewart, the host of RNZ's new 5 a.m. show, First Up, which is due to launch in the next few weeks. And just to hand, the man accused of lighting 2 fires in Nelson last month can now be named. He's Benjamin Durant, and he faces 2 charges of arson. Mr Durant took his fight for name suppression to the High Court, saying that there was a risk of vigilantism if he was named. Now, the High Court has dismissed the appeal. He is accused of lighting a fire on the side of the Mutiri Highway on February 27th and another fire on the side of Pigeon Valley Road on March the 6th. Now, the High Court summary of facts says that Mr Durant denied all involvement in those fires, but later suggested his vehicle exhaust may have started them. UK MPs have set out details of their plan to consider other Brexit options in a series of votes to get underway early tomorrow morning New Zealand time. MPs will fill out a series of ballots testing support for the various ideas that have been kept off the table by Prime Minister Theresa May and her cabinet. And as they take a small sliver of control, there are signs some Tory opponents of Mrs May's deal could be steeling themselves to back it if it comes with an offer of her resignation. The BBC's Norman Smith reports from Westminster.
The senior backbenchers, poised to wrest control of Brexit from the Prime Minister, tonight set out their strategy for forcing Mrs May to change course. At its heart is an attempt to forge a new cross-party consensus to break the Brexit deadlock. This, it's hoped, could be achieved through 2 days of debates and votes tomorrow and on Monday, during which any MP could table any proposal on Brexit. The Speaker would then draw up a shortlist to be voted on, likely to include the main policy options of a customs union, another referendum, revoking Article 50 and no deal. If and when a clear majority is reached, then the government would be challenged to implement Parliament's plan or risk MPs bringing forward a bill to legislate for their agreement. Supporters concede it is a precarious, uncertain procedure, but one the Tory MP Alistair Burt, who resigned as a minister to back the move, said on which MPs must now act.
I hope Parliament realises that there's all sorts of variable choices, but we do have to choose something, because we can't go on with the public being as uncertain as they are. We have to do something, and we shouldn't be this close to the edge.
The government is still to decide whether it'll allow its MPs a free vote, and a succession of senior ministers today warned that they would not be bound by anything Parliament decided. The Health Secretary, Matthew Hancock.
If the Commons voted for the sun to rise in the west, the government wouldn't be able to implement that. So you can entirely see why the Prime Minister can't pre-commit to following any course of action when that course of action voted on may well not be deliverable.
Meanwhile, it's been confirmed in the middle of tomorrow's first crucial debate, Mrs May will address a meeting of Tory backbenchers, at which she's likely to face renewed calls from Brexiteers to set out a timetable for her departure in return for their support. The Tory MP Tim Lawton said he believed it was reaching the end game for Mrs May.
For somebody who's got a huge sense of public service and huge determination in this, it is a great tragedy that it will end, I fear, in the way it's going to end. If she can get the deal through and she can leave having achieved that deal and then pass on the baton to somebody who can then negotiate what's going to happen after that, I think she can walk away with her head held high.
Number 10 hope Brexiteers, alarmed by the prospect of Parliament pursuing a softer, slower Brexit, could still rally to Mrs May's deal, but few outside her immediate circle appear optimistic, with power now seemingly draining away from the Prime Minister.
Norman Smith reporting. The New Zealand Rugby Chief Executive Steve Tew says England's concerns about the proposed new Test Championship don't necessarily mean the concept is off the table. Tew's England counterpart, acting RFU Chief Executive Nigel Melville, has made public his misgivings about World Rugby's Nations Championship, which would bring together the sport's top 12 national teams. Melville says the proposed relegation would have catastrophic consequences for England. But Tew believes it's too early to draw conclusions on the final outcome and told Clay Wilson he wasn't shocked to read Melville's comments.
Well, they're not breaking news for us. We've known all along that the Six Nations have serious concerns about the relegation component of the concept that's on the table, and so not surprised he's probably put it in more stark terms overnight, but relegation is not an easy thing for anybody to deal with, and obviously if it happened to any of us, we'd have to readjust the way we ran our businesses, and that's the concern they have.
It would appear from his other comments as well that he made that the Nations Championship in its proposed form is all but dead in the water. Do you believe that's the case?
Well, I don't take too much notice of what's said through the media. I know the communication with World Rugby and some of our colleagues in the North is that we're all currently working through the proposal. We all think the concept's got real merit. It's great to have something new in front of us, but we and the rest of our SANZAR colleagues have also said we're not saying yes to it either. There are a number of things that we would like to work through, and that process is underway. So to rule it in or out at this stage, we think is premature.
From an NZR perspective, what's been the process that you're going through or are still going through in terms of this proposal being tabled?
Oh, well, it's pretty complex. I mean, we're working through what the competition looks like because there are issues for us. We've got stakeholders to manage in that regard, most particularly our players. And so that's a discussion that's underway. We're looking at the offer and trying to unpick the detail of it because when you're talking about a commercial transaction of this size, as you can imagine, I'm sure there are layers and layers of complexity that you need to understand fully before you can truly assess the value and then make some comparisons against what might else be possible. And alongside that, as you'd expect, we're working on what else might take place if this competition doesn't come off. And SANZAR is working on the other options that are available to us come 2021.
The report this morning said England have told the Southern Hemisphere nation, SANZAR, that they're not interested in overhauling the calendar for this 12-team tournament. Is that the case?
Oh, well, I've certainly not heard that directly, no. The only thing I've heard directly from the RFU is that the time frame might be too tight to make a decision.
That time frame, where does that stand currently? Is there a deadline in place?
Yeah, there's a deadline. We've got a couple more weeks to go, but all the timetable does is gets us to a point where we have to commit to a period of negotiation and due diligence, not commit to the competition or the concept. And so that's a point to clarify for people that the first deadline is really just to commit to that discussion more formally. Currently that is anticipated to be in an exclusive way. We've got our concerns about that and we're going to continue discussing them with World Rugby.
New Zealand Rugby Chief Executive Steve Chu there speaking to Clay Wilson about concerns raised by England about the proposed new Test Championship. If you've been listening tonight, don't forget that you can go online onto our Facebook page or website and look at the stories of Alex Perrottet and Indira Stewart, who spoke to survivors from the mosque shootings today. Their stories will be up online and are worth looking at. Also, Logan Church was on the West Coast. Pictures of the damage there in his story will also be up online and on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's Checkpoint for tonight. Back tomorrow.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The man charged with lighting 2 fires in Nelson last month can now be named as Benjamin Philip Durant. Most of State Highway 6 on the west coast has now reopened, but it remains closed between Fox and Franz Joseph glaciers due to the destroyed Waiho Bridge. Security concerns have forced the cancellation of a service planned at Turanga Waiwai Marae in Ngaroa Wahia to remember the victims of the Christchurch terror attacks. And Auckland health authorities have contacted more than 900 people who may have been exposed to measles. Those are the headlines. Our next news will be at 7 o'clock.
Hi, I'm Jeff Houtman and, well, I've done a bad thing. I've been responsible, at least in part, for making the worst sitcom ever made. Very sad. Very true. We're talking about 40 excruciating episodes of expensive television mediocrity.